Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to sit down, look straight into the camera, and also straight into your eyes, to talk about something I truly believe can change the way you live every single day. It's more powerful than money, more precious than fame, and more enduring than any material possession you could ever accumulate in life. What I'm talking about cannot be held, and it cannot be measured. Yet it determines the peace in your heart, the strength in your voice, and the freedom in every step you take. I call it the art of boundaries. You see, when I stepped into my 60s, I suddenly realized a truth that seems simple, yet is incredibly difficult to accept. Not everyone deserves to enter the inner world of your soul. Let me ask you, have you ever experienced this? You sit down with someone, share so much about your family, your work, your private worries, and then when you leave, instead of feeling lighter, you feel drained, as if someone has quietly siphoned away the peace inside you. I've been there many times, and I've seen many of my friends, many of my students caught in that same exhausting cycle. But the problem isn't really with them. Truly, it isn't. The problem lies within us, because we were the ones who handed over the key to our most private space to people who were not ready to hold it. Boundaries are not high walls that shut people out. They are not isolation. I like to think of them as a gate, and you are the gatekeeper. You decide who can step inside, who should remain outside the fence, and where lies the sacred ground that only you are allowed to walk, untouched by anyone else. Think about the people you truly admire. Maybe a teacher, a leader, or even a close friend you deeply respect. They aren't the ones who reveal everything to everyone. They choose carefully. They know when to open up and when to hold back. And that very discernment is what makes others respect them even more. On the other hand, without boundaries, you'll easily be swept into the endless chase for approval. You overshare. You let others define your worth. And in the end, instead of gaining respect, you slowly lose it. When you know how to keep what must be kept, you don't just protect your inner peace. You preserve something rarer than success itself, the freedom and serenity of your own mind. I remember a close friend of mine now in his 50s calling me one weary afternoon. He sighed and said, "I don't understand why the older I get, the more I feel pulled away from my own life. I say yes to too much. I share too much. And now I have no energy left for myself." I quietly listened. Then I asked him one simple question. Have you ever stopped and asked yourself, what am I keeping just for me? There was a long silence, and then he whispered, probably nothing. In that moment, we both understood. Sometimes we believe that pouring our hearts out is the way to connect, but the truth is, real connection only lasts when we balance what we give with what we keep. Setting boundaries is not selfishness. It's not secrecy. It's simply living with intention, choosing to spend your precious energy on what truly matters. Picture your soul as a garden, a lush green garden full of flowers. If you leave the gate wide open to everyone, soon the flower beds will be trampled. But if you choose who may enter and who must admire from afar, your garden will endure, blooming in its season. Your soul works the same way. Today's society pushes us to share everything. Every meal, every laugh, every tear. All just a few taps away from being broadcast online. And then you receive comments, praise, criticism, empathy, judgment. But here's the real question. Do those comments truly add value to your life? Or are they just noise invading the quiet within you? Neuroscience shows something fascinating. When you talk about your plans too soon, your brain releases dopamine, the same chemical that gives you the satisfaction of achievement. And that false sense of accomplishment often kills the real motivation to act. In other words, sometimes talking too much suffocates a dream before it even has the chance to grow. I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself, how many times have you lost your peace because you shared too soon or opened up too much to people who weren't ready to receive it? How many times have you regretted letting someone step too deep into your private space? A space only you should walk. If you can answer those questions, then maybe today is the day you begin a new journey. The journey of protecting your boundaries. And I want you to remember this. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is power. Privacy is not weakness. Privacy is wisdom. When you stop giving away your power so easily, That is the very moment you truly step into your power. That's why today I invite you to go deeper with me. How do we set wise boundaries? How do we hold sacred our plans, our private lives, our inner peace? And more importantly, how do we practice this in everyday life? So that each morning when you wake up, you feel lighter, freer, and more grounded in yourself. Take a deep breath with me and remind yourself, I deserve a peaceful life and I will protect it with my boundaries. When we talk about boundaries, many people often ask, so what should I keep to myself? And what should I share with others? That's an important question. And the answer is not simple. Because you see, every person is a different story with unique backgrounds, personalities, and experiences. Yet there are a few things that seem universal inner treasures that if we choose to protect, will safeguard our peace of mind. 1. Dreams and plans not yet formed. I remember one of my former students, a woman in her mid-40s who always dreamed of opening a small bakery in her neighborhood. She was an incredible baker. Every time she brought cakes to class, everyone was amazed. But she told me that whenever she excitedly shared her plans, there was always someone ready to pour cold water on her dream. That industry is way too competitive. At this age, isn't it too late to start? Banks don't just hand out loans that easily. Have you ever been in that situation? When your spark of excitement was crushed by someone else's doubt. Science has shown that when you talk too much about your plans, your brain releases dopamine, the same chemical that gives you the sensation of accomplishment. But that false satisfaction can kill your motivation to actually act. And so the dream dies on your lips before it's even born. That's why it's wise to keep your most important plans for yourself. Nurture them in silence. Let them grow through action, not through words. When the tree is strong, when the fruit has ripened, that's when you share. Not to seek permission, but to inspire. 2. Old wounds and unhealed pain. I know many of us believe that sharing our pain will lighten the burden. And it can, but only if we share with the right person, someone capable of holding us, listening to us without judgment. Once I spoke with a man in his 50s who told me about the pressure he endured as a child from strict parents. But when he casually shared that story at a social gathering, the responses were shallow. Oh, everybody's childhood was tough. Just forget it. Don't think too much. How would you feel if the most painful story of your life was reduced to a throwaway line like that? Emotional wounds need respect and gentle listening to heal. If you share carelessly, instead of healing, you risk having salt rubbed into the wound. Keep such things for yourself, or give them only to those who are truly worthy, those you know will hold them with both hands and heart. 3. Family's private life. In today's world, where everything is easily posted online, we've forgotten the value of privacy. I once met a young couple who shared everything on social media, from small arguments to weekend trips. But when a crisis hit their marriage, the entire online community suddenly became the judge. Outsiders cannot live your life. They don't know the full story, nor do they understand your heart. Their judgments, well-meaning or not, always leave a mark. Family is sacred. Keep that privacy intact. Let it belong only to you and your loved ones. Don't turn it into a stage for an uninvited audience. 4. Your personal weaknesses. I'm not saying you should pretend to be perfect, but have you noticed that when you reveal your vulnerabilities to the wrong people, instead of being understood, you may be taken advantage of? I recall an old colleague who once shared his financial struggles with someone he thought was a close friend. Within weeks, his private issue became gossip around the office. He lost not just his trust, but also his dignity in front of his peers. Your weaknesses don't have to stay hidden forever. But they need protection. They should only be shared in safe spaces where you'll find real support, not judgment. 5. Finances and personal assets. This is something I constantly remind people. Not everyone needs to know how much money you have or where you're investing. Money is sensitive. Sharing in the wrong place can stir envy, jealousy, or unnecessary complications. One friend told me that after unintentionally revealing his savings, he was constantly asked for loans by distant relatives. The relationships eventually broke down, not because of the money itself, but because boundaries had been erased. Remember, your security lies in discretion. Finances are not for public discussion. They're something to be safeguarded with wisdom. 6. Silent acts of kindness. Here's something interesting. When we help someone, it's mainly to benefit them, not to prove our own worth. But today's culture often encourages showing off our good deeds, from charity donations to helping a stranger on the street. I'm not saying sharing good deeds is wrong, but ask yourself, am I doing this to truly help or to be praised? Some kindnesses are most beautiful when they remain unspoken, because the real value of kindness lies in the action itself, not in recognition. The strength of selective silence. Do you notice the common thread in all these examples? It's the power of silence. Silence is not indifference. Silence is not avoidance. Silence is a conscious choice. It's the ability to know when to speak and when to hold back. I once heard a spiritual teacher say something I never forgot. Silence at the right time is a gift you give yourself. Because in silence, you allow your dreams to grow safely. In silence, you allow your wounds to heal slowly. In silence, you protect the sacredness of family. And in silence, you step into a peace no one can take away. The first step in setting boundaries. Maybe you're asking yourself, this sounds good, but where do I begin? I want you to imagine that your life is like a house. In that house, there's a living room where you welcome visitors. There's a kitchen where only close friends and family gather. And there's a bedroom, a sacred place reserved for you, and perhaps your partner and no one else. Boundaries in life work the same way. Ask yourself, who belongs in the living room? People who may know a little about you, but only on the surface. Who belongs in the kitchen? The trusted ones who share deeper parts of your life. And what is the bedroom? The sacred space that belongs only to you, untouchable by anyone else. When you see it that way, boundaries stop being vague. They become clear, tangible, and manageable. A final word for this part. I know setting boundaries isn't easy, especially if you've spent most of your life living for others, sharing openly, seeking approval. But trust me, the older you get, the more you'll realize that the most precious thing isn't how many people know your story, but how much peace you've managed to keep in your soul. One day when you look back, you won't regret the moments you chose silence. Instead, you'll smile grateful that you gave yourself the space to breathe, to live, and to grow. Dear friend, we've walked quite a long path together talking about the things we should keep to ourselves, about the boundaries that deserve protection, and about the strength that lies in silence at the right time. I know sometimes while listening to reflections like these, you might feel a quiet stirring inside. Am I letting others step too far into my life? Am I unconsciously giving away the peace I was meant to keep? If questions like that have ever echoed in your heart, then congratulations, you've already taken half the journey toward maturity. Because only when we begin to ask the right questions do we start truly searching for answers. And the answer to peace, to freedom of the soul, often doesn't lie in the big things out there, but in the simple ability to keep a part of your life just for yourself. The garden of life. I want you to imagine your life as a garden. In that garden, there are rows of radiant flowers, your achievements, your joys, your laughter, the things you gladly share with the world. But there are also fragile saplings, dreams, not yet fully grown plans, still forming, or wounds still healing. If you open the gate too soon, letting anyone wander in, trampling over those tender shoots, how will you ever see a true season of blossoms? But if you learn when to open and when to close, when to let others admire, and when to hold things close, you'll find that your garden thrives. And every season of flowers becomes a reward for your patience and wisdom. Silence is not weakness. An old friend once told me, it took me almost a lifetime to realize that silence isn't weakness. It's a form of strength very few people ever master. And I believe that with all my heart. In over 60 years of living and working, I've met countless people, from successful entrepreneurs to humble grandparents in small-town America. And what I've noticed is this: those who know how to keep a part of their lives private are often calmer, happier. They don't get swept up in the endless race of comparisons, they're not enslaved by the opinions of others, and they don't break as easily under senseless judgment. Even science agrees. Studies in psychology show that people who maintain personal boundaries and protect their private lives often report higher life satisfaction and lower levels of chronic stress. A small story to reflect on. I remember a neighbor of mine now in her 70s. She once told me, the day I stopped comparing, stopped showing off, stopped over-explaining, that was the day I finally felt free. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But if you look back, you'll see how many times have we hurt ourselves just to prove something to others. Prove that we're happier, more successful, stronger. Yet in the end, peace doesn't come from proving anything. Peace comes from feeling enough, feeling whole, even when nobody else knows your story. A question for you today. I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself, how many things have you overshared just to seek approval? How many times have you exhausted yourself explaining choices that only needed you to understand? And how often have you allowed others to influence your dreams, your freedom, your faith, simply because you gave them the keys to your private world? If your answer is too many times, then maybe it's time to take that key back. Start with a small step. You don't have to change everything in a single day. Nobody does. But you can start with one small choice today. Choose one thing to keep just for yourself. Maybe it's a plan. Maybe it's a small joy. Maybe it's a new habit you're not ready to tell anyone about. Keep it quietly. Nurture it the way you'd care for a young seedling. And soon you'll be surprised how just a little privacy can bring so much peace to your heart. True freedom. True freedom isn't doing anything you want. True freedom is knowing when to open and when to hold back. It's like a bird that knows when to spread its wings and when to return home. True freedom is when you no longer rely on other people's eyes to define your worth. It's when you can smile in silence, knowing happiness doesn't need to be proven, only lived. A final note for you. So, dear friend, let silence be your companion. Let privacy be your invisible shield. Let the wisdom of knowing when to keep something sacred be a gift you give yourself. You don't have to close yourself off. I'm not suggesting you build walls so high that no one can reach you. What I want you to see is this genuine closeness doesn't come from sharing everything. It comes from sharing the right things with the right people at the right time. When you learn to keep a part of your life for yourself, you'll find your relationships healthier, your presence more respected, and above all, you'll learn to respect yourself in ways you never did before. My invitation to you. Now I have a simple invitation. I want you to answer this question in the comments below. What is one thing you will keep for yourself to protect your inner peace? I would truly love to hear your answer, because your story might inspire not just me, but also this entire community walking alongside you here. And if you found value in today's message, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. That way, you won't miss the next video where I'll continue sharing lessons from life wisdom, from experience, and stories that can bring more meaning to each of your days. Before we say goodbye, I want to leave you with something simple. Life is not measured by what you share outward, but by the peace you protect within. So protect your boundaries. Protect your peace. Protect the strength of spirit that no one can ever take away. Thank you for walking this journey with me today. I'll see you in the next video.